Have you ever stopped to think about how our world, with all its science, its art, its focus on what people can achieve, actually got started? Well, it didn't just happen out of nowhere. It was more like a chain reaction, a huge explosion of ideas and curiosity. And it all started in one particular place, at one particular time. Today, we're diving into the story of that spark.
So, that's the big question we're tackling, right? How on earth did this one peninsula, a place that wasn't even a single country yet, end up lighting the fuse for one of the biggest transformations in all of human history?
Okay, so to get this, you've got to picture 15th century Italy. It's not the Italy we know today. No, it's a patchwork of these super powerful, super rich, and totally independent city-states. You've got Florence, Milan, Venice, and the Papal States, and each one is basically its own little kingdom. And it turns out this really unique setup was the perfect breeding ground for a revolution.
So let's dive into the first piece of the puzzle, the Italian spark. It really seems that geography and politics cooked up the perfect recipe for something brand new to ignite. In this case, location, well, it was everything.
It was like a perfect storm of factors all hitting at once. I mean, look where Italy is, smack in the middle of the Mediterranean, making it the hub for all trade between Europe and the East. That means money, goods, and ideas were just constantly pouring in. Then you've got these city-states, and they're always competing with each other, not just with armies, but in who could have the best art, the grandest buildings, the smartest thinkers. And crucially, these places were often run by super-rich merchant families, not old-school kings, who cared a lot more about making a name for themselves and pushing innovation than they did about old feudal traditions.
And all of that trade, all that competition, it leads to one thing: a ton of money. And what people decided to do with that money, well, that's what really poured gasoline on the Renaissance fire.
We are talking about a serious economic boom here. Cities like Venice and Florence became these bustling centers for luxury goods, for banking, for all kinds of manufacturing. And this created a whole new class of people who weren't born into royalty, but became unbelievably powerful just through their own ambition and smart business deals.
And right at the heart of this world were families like the Medici and Florence. I mean, these guys were bankers, but they used their insane fortunes to become the ultimate sponsors of the arts. They were funding geniuses like Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, and for them, spending money on art wasn't just a nice hobby, it was a power move. It was how they showed off their influence, their wealth, and their pride in their city. This system, called patronage, basically became the economic engine of the whole Renaissance.
So here's the really crucial point. All that money flowing around allowed for a whole new flow of ideas. This new wealth and stability gave thinkers and artists the freedom to look at the world in a completely different way, sparking what was basically a revolution in philosophy.
And this new way of thinking had a name: humanism, and honestly, it was a huge deal. For centuries, the medieval view was that life on Earth was just kind of the waiting room for the afterlife. Humanism completely flipped that script. It said, hey, wait a minute. Human beings, our creativity, our minds, our experiences right here, right now, that stuff matters. It's worth celebrating.
I mean, just look at the difference here. It's dramatic. The focus shifts from the next life to this life. Instead of just relying on scripture as the only truth, scholars started digging up and getting fascinated by the old classical texts from ancient Greece and Rome. The idea that everything was just God's will was challenged by this new belief in what humans could achieve. And art, which for so long was pretty much only for the church, started celebrating the human body in everyday life. This was a seismic shift in how people saw the world.
Now you see where this is going, right? Once you start questioning 1,000 years of tradition in art and philosophy, where do you stop? Well, you don't. That same spirit of, hey, let's figure this out, inevitably turned its attention to the natural world, and even to the stars themselves.
Yeah, the link here is crystal clear. The humanist idea that people could actually understand their world pushed them to observe it, to question it, to run experiments. They just weren't happy anymore with the old, hand-me-down explanations for how the universe worked. They wanted to see for themselves.
For over 1,000 years, the established truth, backed by pretty much everyone, including the church, was that the Earth was the center of everything. The sun, the planets, the stars, they all circled around us. It was a nice, comforting thought that we were at the very center of the action.
And then Copernicus drops this bombshell. So on top, you see the old model, Earth in the middle.
But on the bottom, that's the radical new idea. He suggested that actually the Earth is just another planet and we're all revolving around the sun. It is so hard to overstate how massive this was. It didn't just rearrange the solar system on paper, it basically kicked humanity out of the center of God's creation.
But here's the thing, it was even bigger than that one idea. It was a whole new playbook for how to find the truth. People like Galileo Galilei came along and said, don't just believe what you're told, test it. Observe what happens, run an experiment, and use math to prove it. Suddenly, the ultimate authority wasn't some ancient text anymore. It was cold, hard, provable evidence. This was the birth of the scientific method as we know it.
Okay, so you can totally see the dominoes falling now, right? The Renaissance in Italy lights this fire of questioning, which then directly fuels the scientific revolution. But it didn't stop there. This new way of thinking was about to be applied to, well, everything.
This timeline just lays it all out so perfectly. You can see this incredible momentum building over the centuries. You start with the Renaissance celebrating what humans can do, which leads to Copernicus challenging the heavens, which leads to the scientific revolution championing pure reason, and each step just logically leads to the next one, the Age of Enlightenment.
And this is where it all comes together. People started asking a really powerful question. If we can use reason and evidence to figure out the laws of physics, why can't we use that same logic to understand and improve human society? Suddenly, thinkers were questioning everything: the divine right of kings, the way governments were run, the whole structure of society, paving the way for the modern world we live in. And that brings it all right back to us, doesn't it? That spirit of the Renaissance, that incredible drive to question, to explore, and to believe in our own potential, it's still with us. It really makes you wonder, what are the established truths of our own time that we're in the middle of challenging right now?